Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Man, it's a small world out there, isn't it? I found out just before I hopped on my podcast call today that today's guest and I have brushed paths in the early days of their company when I was an apps guy at the NEC here in Birmingham. And today's guest is Andrew Butt. He's the co-founder and CEO of a company called Enable. And while I'm still in the West Midlands, he is in San Francisco. And Enable is a venture-backed cloud-based SaaS solution for B2B rebate management. And their software is used by procurement and finance professionals in distribution, wholesale, manufacturing, all across over 50 different industries, so they can have an easy, seamless solution to execute and track their full range of trading programs. Now, this is something that I didn't know before I spoke to him today, and that is there are $1 trillion in rebates issued each year, and a 4% of potential rebate revenue typically goes unclaimed due to companies being too reliant on those old school methods such as Excel spreadsheets and inadequate software solutions. And my understanding is that's where Enable fits in and ensures the revenue doesn't fall through all those cracks. And another quick fact before we get him on here, they have more merchants and suppliers in the UK and US than any other comparable software solution. So I'm really looking forward to this. We've got so much going on. We've got our past lives and how they flirted with each other and what is happening now. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to San Francisco, where Andrew Butt, co-founder and CEO of Enable, is waiting to join us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Andrew. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I know. Thanks for having me, Neil. So I'm Andrew Butt. I'm co-founder and CEO of Enable, which is a software company. This is my third software startup, and I'm sure we can talk more about that as we go through.
And before we start, I want to learn a little bit more about your origin story because, like you said, you've launched 3 startups. I believe you were born in Coventry and you now find yourself in San Francisco. So where did your passion for tech come from? What lit the spark and put you on this path you're on?
That's a good question because neither of my parents are really into tech, but really my mother's father and my mother's brothers, they were more into kind of tech and computing and kind of audio and mechanics and that type of thing. So I think that's where it came from when I initially got into programming as a young child, really. And then my father always run accountancy firms, so I had an interest in business, and I was fortunate to be able to combine the two together and kind of build a business around tech.
Wow, fantastic. And I think it was back in 2017 that you launched Enable, which is a venture-backed $64 million cloud-based SaaS solution for B2B rebate management. But can you tell me a bit more about Enable and those problems that you set out to solve with tech?
Sure, absolutely, yes. So with Enable, the inspiration came when I met my co-founder. We were actually both learning to fly at the time, which is my other hobby. I was kind of programming and just starting out really, and then Dennis Shaw was already a very successful entrepreneur who had a very successful distribution business, and we got chatting, and he explained to me that the gross profit margin in distribution generally was getting squeezed, and then these things called rebates were growing significantly and becoming more complicated, and that's kind of where all the profit margin was, but they were just so difficult to track. The standard accounting systems couldn't do them well, and so him and everyone else in the industry were using spreadsheets. So we said, let's launch a modern SaaS solution that can kind of fully model and track all of these complicated B2B rebates and significantly increase kind of revenue and profit. So that was where the idea came from.
And I must admit, I didn't know too much about that world until you came on today. I was doing a bit of research and thought, I better get up to speed with what's happening here. And I read that there are more than $1 trillion in rebates issued each year, and 4% of potential rebate revenue typically goes completely unclaimed due to companies using those old school methods like spreadsheets and inadequate software solutions, etc. So how does Enable make sure that revenue doesn't fall through the cracks?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So there's lots of things that we do. The software calculates very, very precisely. It looks at literally every order, every individual product, every single rebate deal, and kind of performs a cross-check reconciliation. So it produces a very detailed statement of what's owed, whereas most companies don't even calculate it at all. They just rely on the supplier doing that and being honest. Now most suppliers are honest, but also suppliers don't often calculate this very accurately either. So the first thing we do is just calculate very precisely, but we also allow companies to identify opportunities based on where they're trading today, and then where the kind of tiers and incentives are within the rebates that they've agreed, and help to direct them to buy more or sell more of a particular type of product to get into the next rebate tier. So those are a few examples of what we do.
Wow. And I read a great stat before you come on as well, that you have more merchants and more suppliers in the UK and US than any other comparable software solution. Is that right? And if it is, what's your secret?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really neglected space. And so there's very few software companies that do what we do. So I guess it's not that difficult to be the biggest. But the ones that do exist are typically quite old school. So they're kind of pre-cloud, not easy to use, very time consuming to actually set up and expensive to set up. So what we did is we really built this in the cloud, and it's very rapid and low cost to implement. And we've therefore been able to get lots and lots of customers set up and take the risk away for them, and say, look, we will get you set up and get you to success. And if we can't do that, then it's almost just you can walk away and it's easy. So we've taken all the risk out, and that's given us the very fast growth that we've enjoyed.
So do you have any use cases that you could share, or just help listeners understand how it might work in their world?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's really any distributor or any retailer, anyone that buys things and resells them, has different types of rebate opportunities, because what manufacturers are doing is they will sell to you at a particular cost price, and that can obviously be negotiated. But there's only so far you can go with that. The cost price will always be relatively high. And then what they'll say is, if you can achieve a particular target, let's say a value threshold or a volume threshold, then you can actually receive a rebate. And the reason they do it is it really then focuses you on hitting that target. So imagine if I just give you, let's say you're buying something for £100 and selling it for 120. If I reduce that to say £80, you might only buy 1 or 5 or 10. There's no incentive to buy 1,000. But if I say, it's £100, but once you've bought 1,000, I'll then give you £20 back on every single one you bought. That encourages you to hit the target. So this is really why rebates exist, and that's what we can help companies to achieve.
And I suspect there might be a few business leaders listening, getting quite excited, thinking this is the kind of thing that we need. And then they go to their IT director, who asks them a load of technical questions. So for any techies listening, can you just tell me a little bit more about the tech that makes it all possible?
Sure. Yeah. So we're entirely in the cloud. We've always been a Microsoft house. So in the front end, we're using modern JavaScript libraries, and we're not kind of restricted to the Microsoft stack. But in the back end, we're all on Microsoft Azure or Azure, depending on your accent. So we're in Azure, and so therefore kind of SQL Server and Microsoft stack.
Now, as someone that's on their third startup, I'm kind of hoping that you can inspire some founders listening today who could be located anywhere in the world at the very beginning of their journey by, I don't know an easy way of saying this, by sharing your biggest failure and what you learned from that experience. Because very often we only celebrate the successes, but it's those failures that shape you, isn't it?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I've always been told that we learn when things go wrong, not when they go right. So, and there's plenty of things that have gone wrong. That's for sure. I think the biggest lesson for me is about focus. And I think when you identify a big enough problem that you can solve, then the opportunity around that problem is huge. And it's important to be very, very focused. And I've had things in the past where I've had too many different things going on, launched too many products and services, branched out too quickly into new things. And then I've become very kind of diluted, and I've spread myself too thin. And so there's been a couple of things there where it's really, things haven't worked out, and I've had to shut them down and then get back to the core. So I think again, to summarize, it's about focus, identifying the right thing that's really big and important, and then do nothing else. Just focus on that exclusively.
I love that. And here in 2022, where do you go from here? What's your grand vision for Enable?
Yeah, so the companies we've started so far have all been successful. One of them was acquired by private equity in London a few years ago, and that worked out well. Another one we took to steady, profitable growth, and it was a services company offering great service and as I say, making a margin and growing organically. But with Enable, this is actually a huge opportunity where we really are having an impact on many companies, on multiple industries. We've already spread from the UK to the US and Canada. We've got customers also across Europe, in Australia. And so we're going fully global. We are actually physically opening up in Australia, and I want to build a kind of global company of consequence, really. So definitely want to take this company public, and even that is only the start of a new chapter. But I think we're focused on and we're on the trajectory to take this company public in the US in the next several years.
And a question I've got to ask on behalf of any startup founder listening outside of the US, you're someone that's been able to crack America. And I think it was 2 years ago you left the UK and gone to live in San Francisco to get everything up and running. What are the biggest lessons you've learned in going through that? And has it helped transform Enable?
Oh, absolutely. It's helped transform Enable. Yeah. I mean, I think, first of all, we did get some early successes in the US before we were actually in the country. Yeah. So we had inbound inquiries and won several customers and got them to success. So we had done enough kind of research, but also real implementation to know that there was a market and a need, and that the thing we built in the UK would work well in the US. But then, since the point you mentioned, when I came over here 2 years ago, I mean, we had nobody in the country. It was just me, and now we've got a big team in North America. And the critical thing has been bringing in the right people, so the right leadership, in country, people that have done it before and know how to scale. And so that's been the critical thing of, I'd say, to summarize, proving that very early traction. And then as soon as we could see we had product market fit, then bringing in the right experienced people that can build for scale. And it has totally transformed the company for sure.
Fantastic advice. Now, we started the podcast talking about your origin story, and you've done a lot of flying. You've gone from Coventry to San Francisco. I imagine you've got some noise-cancelling earphones in your kit bag. So is there a song that has accompanied you or inspired you in your career, or maybe a book or anything that has inspired you? Have you got a choice and a story for us?
I think reading, I mean, I enjoy reading and absorbing information. And one of the books, which is really old now, but again, it's relevant to what I was saying earlier about focus, is Crossing the Chasm by Geoffrey Moore. And that was originally published in 1991, but it really talks about kind of prioritizing the use cases that you can solve for, so that you really just look at the top one and crack that, and then just one by one kind of expand out, and getting those early adopters, or those visionaries in fact, and then jumping across into the early adopters. So that was very enlightening for me in my kind of career so far. And then I think I really love following inspiring business leaders. So the biography on Steve Jobs, and also the biography on Elon Musk, they were very, very inspiring in terms of what kind of hard work and what vision can really yield. So those would be my top three.
Awesome. Well, I'll get those added to our Amazon wish list. And for anyone listening wants to just find out more information about Enable and the work that you're doing, or even contact your team, what's the best starting point?
So, I mean, the website is enable.com. So nice, easy domain name to remember. Just go to enable.com. And then my kind of social media platform is really LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Please feel free to connect, and we can communicate there.
And was it hard getting that URL? I would imagine you must have got in early for
yes.
that one.
Oh, we bought it off someone. So we did. My colleague, who's been with me since the beginning, did a really good deal where we bought it off the current owner, and therefore paid a few pounds for it, but it wasn't too crazy. But we do get offers all the time, but of course they're not. We're not selling it.
Oh, I love that. And I mean, like I said before you came on here, I had no idea that there were more than 1 trillion in rebates issued each year, and 4% of potential rebate revenue goes unclaimed. So I applaud everything that you're doing here and making sure that revenue doesn't fall through the cracks by using your technology. But more than anything, at the very heart of all that is your story and how it's took you from the UK to the US. So thank you for sharing that with me today.
Thanks for having me. It's been great talking with you.
After our call, Andrew was dropping in a few names of people I used to work with that I'd completely forgotten about. It just blew my mind at how small this world can be sometimes. Maybe I should start a spin-off podcast, 6 Degrees of Separation of Neil Hughes. But seriously, over to you. If you'd like to share your story on here with me, the door is always open. Just email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. If you'd like to work with me, my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. And even if you've just got a few questions, whatever it is, send them over to me and I'll get straight back to you. And if you haven't, well, I would just say hold on, because I'll be back tomorrow in your feed with another guest. So thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.